Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Kathy Jessup and I'm a storyteller and a writer living in Edmonton, Alberta. Today I'm going to bring you the final part, episode 5 in my series on the imagination muscle. Now in past episodes we've talked about the imagination and how it's kind of like a muscle in your body. You need to exercise it and work it to keep it strong. If you'd like to learn more about training your imagination muscle, check out episodes 1 through 3 in this series. Now last time in episode 4, we talked about brainstorming and how a strong imagination helps you generate ideas for stories. And at the end of episode 4, I left you with a challenge. I talked about a few ideas, something that you might be able to use to come up with a problem and then turn that problem into a story. What I gave you was 2 characters. Now one of them was a kid, could be any age, boy or girl, whatever you like. A kid and their grandpa. I also gave you a story topic. It should be something generally about fishing. And I gave you a setting, a cabin by a lake. So now I'm wondering how you made out. Were you able to brainstorm a problem? What kind of trouble could a kid and their grandpa get into while they're fishing? Now I took this same challenge a few years back. I wrote a story called Hilary's Fishing Trip. And I began by brainstorming ideas. And I started that with 2 little words, what if? And I still have my brainstorming list. Here's a few of them. The boat runs out of gas. The engine falls off the boat into the water. The boat tips over in a bad storm. The boat hits something in the water. There's a hole and it begins to leak water. They catch so many fish, the boat starts to sink. Hilary falls overboard. Oops, Grandpa's favorite fishing rod falls overboard. They meet a talking fish. The boat goes through a big wave and it's actually a portal to another land. Or what if Grandpa gets sick while they're fishing and he can't drive the boat and Hilary has to and she doesn't know how. Wow. So those were just a few of my ideas and maybe some of yours might have been similar. Well, eventually I chose one of those problems and I turned it into a story. And now it's time to find out just where my imagination took me. Here's the story of Hilary's fishing trip. On the day that Hilary's grandpa promised to take her fishing, Hilary woke up really early and really excited. She had never ever been fishing before and she just knew this was going to be a trip to remember. Hilary and Grandpa quickly ate their breakfast, while Grandma packed them a lunch to take along for later. And into each lunch bag, Grandma snuck a surprise treat. In Grandpa's bag, she put a big hunk of his favorite chewy toffee. And in Hilary's bag, she stuffed a long red licorice stick. Now, when it was time to go, Grandma stood at the dock and waved goodbye, while Hilary and Grandpa climbed into the boat, turned it around, and headed out for Grandpa's favorite fishing spot. Hilary noticed her grandpa was even wearing his special cap with the words "Champion Fisherman" written on it. And she figured her grandpa was definitely the best fisherman in the whole world. Well, as they settled down to do some serious fishing, Hilary looked down into the water and she said, "Grandpa, are you sure the fish are down there just waiting to be caught? I can't see them." Grandpa tugged on his cap. "Trust me, Hilary. I've been fishing these waters for many years. I know just where to find the biggest, the tastiest fish." And with that, he reached down to a bucket between his feet and he pulled out a big fat worm and he shoved the worm onto his hook. Then he reached over to do the same thing to Hilary's fishing rod. "Ooh, yuck, Grandpa," she shrieked. "That's gross. You're not going to put that on my line, are you? Ugh, what kind of fish would want to eat that?" Grandpa tugged on his cap. "Trust me, Hilary. I've been fishing these waters for many years and I know just what kind of bait these fish like." Well, they sat at Grandpa's favorite fishing spot for hours and they didn't even have a nibble. Finally, Grandpa said, "Hilary, maybe it's time we tried my second favorite fishing spot. We'll have better luck there. Trust me." So they tried Grandpa's second favorite fishing spot, followed by his third and his fourth favorite fishing spot. They didn't catch a thing. Now by this time hours had passed and Hilary was hungry. Grandpa, do you think maybe the fish might bite a little better after lunch? She hinted. Good idea, grinned Grandpa. So they put down their fishing rods and they opened up their lunch bags. Now, while Hilary was munching away her sandwich, she got to thinking about those fish down under the water. You know, she thought to herself, if I was a fish, I wouldn't want to eat a yucky old worm. I don't care how starving I was. I'd much rather eat. And just then, Hilary spied the treat that Grandma had put in her lunch bag, the red licorice. Oh, that's it, she thought. Red licorice. I bet if I put a hunk of that on my line, I'll catch a fish for sure. So, when Grandpa wasn't looking, Hilary took the worm off of her hook, and in its place she put a big, juicy chunk of red licorice. Trust me, Hilary, said Grandpa, when they threw their fishing lines back into the water. These fish always bite better after lunch. But you should have seen the look on Grandpa's face when all of a sudden a great big rainbow trout leapt out of the water, did 2 loop-de-loops in the air, and dove straight for Hilary's hook. It was a tremendous battle. That fish pulled and tugged, and Hilary pulled and tugged, and she reeled that fish right into Grandpa's net. Well done, Hilary, beamed Grandpa. Boy, I've been fishing these waters for many years, and that's the biggest fish I've ever seen come out of this lake. Yep, those juicy red worms work every time. See, Hilary? All you had to do was trust me. Grandpa, interrupted Hilary, I didn't exactly catch this fish using a worm. You see, I sort of swapped the bait when you weren't looking, and, what? Sputtered Grandpa. Swap the bait? What do you mean you swapped the bait? Just what did you use to catch this huge fish? Red licorice, said Hilary in a teeny tiny voice. Red licorice, roared Grandpa. Red licorice? He scratched his head in amazement. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. And with that, he took off his champion fisherman cap and he put it on Hilary's head. Hilary smiled proudly, and then she reached into the lunch bag for the rest of the red licorice. She shared half with Grandpa, and they turned that boat for home, sitting side by side, munching away on red licorice, and staring out at the water very seriously, the way good fishermen do. Now, when the boat pulled up to the dock, Grandpa turned to Hilary one last time, and he said, Okay, Hilary, are you sure you caught that fish using red licorice for bait? Really? Oh, yup, Grandpa, nodded Hilary. It was red licorice, all right. Trust me. And the 2 fishermen headed up the dock towards the cabin, where Grandma and supper were waiting for them. And there you go. Well, I wonder if you were able to see some pictures in your imagination as that story went along. I always see pictures in my head every time I tell that story. And this brings our series about the imagination muscle to a close. I hope you found it helpful to you as you go forward writing stories in the future. I really had a good time. I hope you did too. I'm Kathy Jessup from Edmonton, Alberta. Thank you very much for joining me. So long. Thanks also to the Young Alberta Book Society for sponsoring Yabs TV.